Yeah. So maybe we can also touch on, like, there's a lot of founders, there's a lot of AI startups out there, and to your point, sometimes joining early a company that is doing well or like clearly will do well is a better choice. But given how many AI startups out there, it's very hard for a lot of these engineers looking to join a startup to find which startup they should join. So do you have any advice for them on how they should pick or how evaluate them?
Well, one of the things to understand is that this is a natural consequence of the model you were discussing with me earlier. Every time there's a new wave, there's lots of people trying to be the winner. And so, and especially as a young person coming out of graduate school or whatever, it's very hard to know. And so, my view is actually a little different from most people. I don't think you try to pick the winner. I think you try to pick the place where you're going to have the most fun. Because if you're having fun, assuming you're a high quality person, you're working with very smart people. And a rising tide does lift all boats. And I will tell you that there's, an example is who invented the iPhone? And your answer would be Steve Jobs. No, that's actually not true. There were 1,000 people at Apple with a vice president who was in charge of it who was very talented. And Steve was a master showman and a brilliant strategist and so forth. But there was a whole team that did all that work. And yet we don't know who they are. So think about the role and history that they've had in our world, and they should be very proud of what they did. So the fact of the matter is, if we go back to this question of how do you want to sort of lead lead with incredibly smart people, and then as a young person, find the smartest people that you know, and just literally maybe your best friends in graduate school or whatever it is, and hang out with them. And if there's any sense of winning, just try it. And that's the genius of the system. And especially as a young person, you can afford to take risks. The funny thing is when Larry and Sergey and I were talking about as the company became successful, one day Larry said, I don't understand. When we founded the company, we had nothing and we took these huge risks. Now we have all of this money and we're not taking the same level of risks. And that's the natural course of aging. And he was, of course, right, as usual. And that's the natural course of aging in a company. So, especially in startups, it's the time to take the risks, right? And they have so many things against them. If you go back to successful startups, and I know you know this, startups need a bunch of things to happen. They need to be in the right time. The technical term is product market fit. They need to be building something that the market wants. They have to have a new idea that solves a new problem with very good technology, and they have to have a way of monetizing. So if you look at Google, Google had two things. It had the search engine itself, which is obviously brilliant because it was called PageRank. Larry invented it as part of his master's work way back when. But it also had a monetization engine, generally known as AdSense, which used a different kind of auction that was better. It's called a Victory auction, where it was a so-called second price auction. And I remember when I discovered this, and again, they invented it, I thought, we have the right combination. We have a great product and we have a way of monetizing it. I had no idea how successful that would be. When you start, you have no idea because we had no cash. But the brilliance of it was it scaled. Today, just to give a precise answer, when I meet with a startup, and I was doing this today, I would say, show me where the learning is in your model. So if you're building a company that's not learning as it goes, and by that I mean using a foundation model or some other AI tool, you're going to be beaten by the competitor that has learned that because the fastest learner wins. This produces a very interesting conversation. So the learning people are different from the traditional engineering. And if you don't have any, they're very hard to get. Whereas the companies which are built by the AI founders are typically not engineers who know how to build things. So then you have to augment either one. So the perfect company, in my view today, would have some AI researchers and learning people who can understand how to use machine learning as essentially foundation models, specialized models, fine-tuned models, and so forth to scale. And the reason that that's so interesting is that if you build on something like GCP and the Google Cloud or its competitors, once you get learning going on, as the learning accelerates, your market share accelerates. So learning and fast market share gains tends to get you to a 90% space and therefore dominance in a field as long as you do it quickly. The fastest path to wealth for a startup founder is to do what I just said, if possible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's